Welcome to the Painting Insights podcast. We have been working on something in the background.
That's right. We've actually started a Patreon channel. For the last couple of months, we've had previous guests revisit the channel to give us additional content, everything from studio tours, sketchbook tours, talking us through the process of paintings and all kinds of additional treats, which you're exclusively going to see as a patron who supports the channel.
So by supporting us on Patreon, you help the channel keep going. There's a lot of work put into this, from the video editing to the sourcing of guests. So you really help us find those guests and to put the content out.
And we have lots of content planned for the near future. So the links for that will be in the description of this video and in the description on the podcast channels. And otherwise, you can go on to Patreon and type in Painting Insights Podcast and support us that way. Thanks very much. Enjoy the video. Okay, so would you mind introducing yourself for the audience, please?
Hi, I'm still Yo Rühmer. I'm still living in Germany. I'm an illustrator since 30 years, and since 2012 I started doing plein air painting in oils as a counterbalance to my mostly digital illustration. And in 2020 I wrote a book about plein air painting, because in German language it doesn't exist another one yet. And after I wrote the book, I was able to teach my way of painting, because I analyzed my painting and why and how I did everything, how I do everything, how I do it. And especially for me, my main interest is, it sounds dry, but it isn't at all, color theory, color mixing, because for me it's the essence to go outside and do the plein air painting, because you have all the colors around you without the filter of a camera lens. And that's for me the main thing, to go outside. Not really the main thing. The main thing is to be outside. To be outside, beautiful landscape. That's the most interesting thing for me.
Yeah. Well, for anyone who isn't aware, this is part 2. So anyone who would like to see those topics explored at greater detail, I will leave a link in the top left-hand corner of the screen now. So that's the episode for part 1. And we're going to now continue on, because the conversation was so wonderful. And I'd like to pick up on something that you just mentioned, because we didn't really cover this. We kind of touched upon it, how you were using colors intuitively, and then you learned color theory, and you've kind of discovered the reason why your intuitions were guiding you to these more successful combinations and relations between colors. Can you talk about that a little bit for us?
When I began to paint in oils, as I told about it, mixing wasn't a problem from the start, but I had to choose wisely which colors I take with me when I go outside. If you paint in the studio, you have an amount of different colors, I'm sure. And some of them you never use, and you have your favorites. But if you go outside only with your favorites because of your taste or the mood in your paintings or your style, it could be difficult, because when I go outside, I never know before what I will paint. Okay, if I am in Brittany, it's very, it could be, no, how to say, it's sehr wahrscheinlich, don't know the word. It's sure I will make a seascape, so I have to put blue in it and everything. But normally I go outside here in Frankfurt. I don't know if I need mostly the greens because I am in the meadows, or if I found a red car or red roses, and I need a lot of red. And if you want to paint proper saturated colors, you need a balanced palette, but not too much. I tried with the 3 primaries, and I think everybody know the difficulties. You have a red, you have a blue, and you want to mix a violet, but it's not really saturated violet. And that's because of the color temperature of your primaries. So if you have a cool yellow and a cool blue, then the green is much cooler. And to mix a warmer green only with that cool yellow, you can put yellow in it and yellow in it, and would never become quite orangey yellow. And that's why it's not my discovery. I read it, I had a look into the internet, and I asked a colleague of mine, and so I came to that, I have it here, to that 2-tone primaries. Here you can see it. I have every primary in 2 temperatures, in cool and warm, warm and cool, warm and cool. And talk about the temperature is about the relationship between. Yellow is every time a warm color, but compared to a yellow with a little bit red in it, the yellow without the red, lemon yellow, is much more cooler in relationship. And if you have these colors with you, you are able to mix nearly every color in front of you, even if you don't know what will be there. And in this logic, I have 2 dark tones. I know many people mix the black. I never use black. Black make dark, dead holes in your paintings. Many painters mix their black out of umbra. How do you say umbra?
Yeah, umbra. Yeah.
Umbra, and ultramarine blue and everything like this. But I wanted to keep my palette simple, and so I needed 2 dark tones to go nearly to black without mixing a lot. And so I chose Payne's gray and Van Dyke brown. And it's the same logic. The Van Dyke brown is more yellowish and it's warmer than the Payne's gray, which is more bluish. Yeah. So that's about my colors. And it's much better to reduce yourself to that limited palette and use the colors right away every time you go painting, because that's the way you learn your colors really good. And you have the feeling for them, and you can mix after a while, you can mix intuitively, even though you started by struggling with color mixing. And if I change something, I make it quite carefully, not to change 2 or 3 colors at once, only one color after another, because even the cadmium red from another brand has completely different pigments in it and feels another way. And so I highly recommend to choose your own palette by trying to mix the most colors of it. And it doesn't have to be dry. It could be really interesting. And with my students, I make some exercises to pick up some leaves, some twigs, stones in the nature, and try to mix exactly the tone of the color in value, hue, and the tonal. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then if I can ask a theory color, I suppose, or maybe it's a practice color question, which is, if you do have a cool blue and a cool yellow, and you wanted to make a warmer green, can you compensate with a touch of red if you have a cadmium?
Yeah, sure, yeah. To make it more easy and to have more control of it, I always mix an orange, because the red, especially if you decide for a warm cadmium red, it's so highly pigmented. Only a move from it can change the completely green to a brown. Yeah. So if you mix, before you mix a little orange on your palette, and then you put the orange inside, and so you can make it. But if you have the possibility to use a warm cadmium yellow, for example, and mix the cold green with this warm yellowish, warm reddish yellow, you become a wonderful warm green in instant.
Oh, lovely. That is a pro tip.
Yeah, it's a little bit like cooking. You have to taste it. And I use a palette knife for mixing. And then you can, if you have the palette knife, then I put the paint on top of the palette knife. And if I want to mix this blue, I hold it side by side, and then I control it. And even though I don't know what's the difference, I immediately see the difference, because side by side, there is no question anymore. It's not the same blue. And then you have to try it to push it in the right direction. And that's a little bit like cooking. And in the beginning, you have to taste it very often, and maybe you need a kind of receipt. But after a while, you make it like this.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, for anyone, just in case, just to be very safe, that was a metaphor for anyone listening. Don't taste your paint. Very toxic. You don't want to taste paint.
Yeah,
it's a metaphor for cooking.
I have a lot of questions about my sand tones when I'm painting dunes in the beaches.
Oh, yeah.
How do you mix that beach? Which color did you use? And then I say all of them. Because it's a kind of gray. You start with a gray and you push it in a more yellowish direction or a more bluish direction. But you start with a gray, and I have a sweater. And my sweater, I will call it, it's a natural brown, green, muted. Okay. And if I lay this sweater at the beach in the sand, it's nearly the same color. And I thought, that could not be. Beaches aren't brownish green, but they are. Sometimes they are. And you have to, don't paint what you know. You have to paint what you see. And everybody thinks, yeah, sand beaches are yellow. Ochre, yellow? No, they aren't. Sometimes, if the light is right and everything, but normally it's a kind of gray.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I remember my brother years ago telling me, if you're painting grass, use flash tint, because you'll see bits of a kind of a peachy pink color in grass.
Yeah.
And since then, whenever I look at grass, I see it, and I always appreciate how unnatural that feels to do a kind of peachy pink color in grass.
The things we think we are knowing are so dominant in our brain that even if we discover these colors in the grass, we won't believe ourselves, because we are knowing grass has to be green. But if you are, I think if you are an alien and are the first time on our planet, then you can judge the colors from reality. And that's the one important thing to learn when you learn painting, is learn how to see and forget what you might to know. Yeah,
that's wonderful. Just a quick story. I once worked for a dental laboratory, and I would drive around with one of my colleagues delivering dentures and crowns and things to dentists. And on the way, I would talk about how I'm going to visit a farm of one of the technicians at the dental laboratory, because she invited me, and I wanted to go and paint the sheep and see what colours were in the sheep's wool reflected. And he said, spoiler alert, it's grey. And I just laughed, and he said, that's not true, is it? And I was like, it's kind of true, but it's also, for an artist, it's not as true as you'd think it is. But it's
Yeah,
very funny, just thinking it's white and then it's grey. And I just
yeah,
think
yeah,
that's the assumption that we have that's
yeah.
probably more inaccurate than you'd think.
What I discovered for me is, if you are not sure if the gray at the beach is it more magenta? Is it more yellow? Is it more blue? Is it more, what is it? Then you put all the nuances you see side by side on your canvas. And this is not only a solution because you don't know which color it is, it makes your painting much more vivid. Do you say
Vivid?
vivid?
Yeah.
Because you have all these nuances together, and the viewer collect all that nuances and mix in the eye the correct tone, the absolutely correct tone. So if you can't decide yellow, blue, put them all together, and then it's the perfect match.
When you say put them all together, do you mean literally painting on the canvas?
Yeah, you can do it. You can mix your paint on the palette to really homogeneous paint without disturbing tones in it. Yeah. And then you put it on your canvas, and I swear it could be really boring for the viewer. But if you mix with one brush stroke has a little bit of yellow in it, and one brush stroke had a little bit of red in it, and it mixed on the canvas, and you can work it in together, then it appears to be very vibrant and color changing. And I love this. It starts with a happy accident, but it ends with good. It's a solution, absolutely.
So that's how it started for you, as an accident, was it? Was it a happy accident?
Yeah, in the beginning, I as an illustrator, I wanted to have it perfect. And I worked into it, and every time you go over it and over it, it gets more and more boring. That's what I discovered. And sometimes when I look at really vibrant paintings of other painters, if you go closer, you can see the impasto brush strokes, and the impasto disappears not only from the amount of paint, but of the multicolored brush stroke, multicolored in one brush strokes. And that's what makes it so painterly.
Wow. That's wonderful.
I love that. Have to go close. That's why it's important to go to exhibitions and see the paintings in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of your paintings, I did want to ask about your number system of your paintings. Can you talk about how you number your paintings?
Yeah. I number my paintings from the beginning. The first painting I showed in the previous episode. Several causes for that. The easiest cause is I don't have to choose titles for my paintings, and I can archive them in my computer, and I found every painting immediately because of the number. Then I wanted to push myself to paint and paint and paint and paint, because in the beginning, when I started painting, I heard a really good and for me very inspiring quote that every painter has 1,000 bad paintings inside, and they have to be done. They have to go out to make the way free for the good paintings. It could be a little bit discouraging to hear that, but maybe you can count from the beginning. Even you painted in the kindergarten, and maybe you did there the first 100 paintings. You can count them. It's okay. And sure, in the first 1,000 paintings may be some good. Sure, like my first one, and after that it goes like this. And now I'm at my painting number 1,350, I think. And I have to admit there are a lot bad between still. So it's only something you have to understand. To learn painting, you have to paint. and to paint and to paint. There is not a short way. Even though I am teaching, and I think I'm teaching good, I can help a little bit on the way to do that paintings, but for the good paintings, you have to paint. There's no trick behind, no receipt, only painting.
Yeah. Well, there was a nice coincidence, well, not coincidence, but there was a nice mirroring of your painting number 1 and painting number 1000.
Yeah. My painting number 1000, I did exactly 10 years after the first one at the same location, in the same weather conditions. And you can see it side by side. That even though I still think my first painting wasn't so bad, you can see the progress.
Yeah.
And I will recommend to everyone, even though you don't keep your old paintings and you will overpaint them like I do, take photographs of it and compare yourself to your older you. Do not compare with other painters. Compare yourself to yourself, and then you can see the progress. And that's inspiring, not to compare you with the others, even though they started at the same point or something. And when I'm teaching, the students are like, "Oh, you paint so beautiful, I never would." No, you would, but I am 1,000 paintings further than you. And if you, sometimes I show on my iPhone when I have a beginner student and he says, "Oh, I'm so bad." And I say, "Okay, which number do you paint right now?" "It's number 10. "Okay, I will show you my number 10. And then he can recognize, "Oh, I'm not so bad." Yeah.
Well, as I said, there is some, you touched upon that, how people will look at someone better than them and compare themselves. There is some merit to painting with people who are more advanced than you are. Can you speak about your experience with that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. As I told in the previous episode, there was this guy, an illustrator colleague, I went out with my sketchbook and he started to paint in oils with an easel outside, and I was blown away. And that was my initial point, my starting point, why I go outside and paint. And I'm still, together with this guy, I do still paintings, and he started on such a high level and I'm here, and we go always like this. I'm always a few steps behind, and I can compare my paintings from now with his paintings from before 5 or 6 years, and they are similar. So I'm sure if I stay tuned, I will get there somehow. Not the same way, but the level of painting, the level of seeing. His name, I mentioned it before, his name is Thorsten Wolber. He's a painter from Cologne, living in Cologne, and he's a portrait and figurative painter, and even he started to do it on plein air and inspired me with that. He changed completely to portrait and figure painting, and only once or twice a year we go outside and make an art retreat together with other painters. We have a group of painting buddies. We are 4 painters which spend 1 week a year together to paint. And we have choose a name for us. We are named Plein Air Malheur. And even though you never should explain jokes, it's because one of the 4 buddies is a Frenchman. And if a French say the word Maler, which means painter in German, Maler, with a French accent, it's Malheur. Like that, we are the Plein Air Malheur instead of Plein Air Maler, like Plein Air painters.
So what's the meaning? What does Malheur?
Malheur, it's the French word for not accident. It's something happens, something bad happens. That's a malheur.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, very good.
So it has several levels of a joke.
Yeah, that's very good.
So we meet once a year, and the Thorsten, as a portrait painter, he goes outside and paint on plein air because it's for him, it's like a training camp, like a booth camp, because he says, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. You have to be you have to make strong decisions outside, and to be very fast and very strict what you are painting and what not, and how to simplify it. Simplification, it's the main key to plein air paintings. And after he is painting on plein air and go back to the studio, and even if he paint a portrait, he has something learned. And that's why in further times, and I think good academies make it still like that, to teach painting, even though you are not interested in plein air painting or landscape painting, go outside and paint from life, because you learn so much outside. Or when in wintertime, sometimes I make still lifes. And even though it would be maybe simpler to take a good photo and paint from the photo reference, I built up my setup in front of me, even though there's light from outside and cast shadows. I try to paint it completely from life, because the direct view and way to paint is more interesting for me. And as I told you before, when I have too much time, I kill my paintings. And so to paint from life, was even inside my setup of a still life, the shadow is moving. And so I have to hurry up, and that's good for my paintings.
Well, do you have a sketchbook as well, or do you work exclusively onto canvases?
Exclusively on canvases, no sketches. No. But I will recommend another really good thing is to make pochettes that are oil sketches, little oil sketches. Because we talked about the amount of paintings you have to paint. It doesn't depend on the size. Size does not matter. Every painting you do counts. So if you do many of small paintings, it's not a different to do many of big paintings. And in my workshops, I do this little pochettes.
Oh, lovely.
And I ask my students to do them by themselves. If you start on a big white canvas, it's overwhelming, and you don't know how to start, and you are scary and everything. And if I give you a size like this and say, paint it, yeah, okay, nothing could happen. It's only a small one. And I push my students to use, if you have a size like this, I take a brush like this. And with this relationship, you are pushed to simplify, because you can't get too fiddly with a big brush. And you will learn it doesn't need to be, only a few things on the canvas can capture the mood perfectly. If you have the right colors in the right place, even the shapes are wrong or too bold, you can capture a mood. And so you can do like this. I do it also for explaining things in my workshops, because I don't want to paint into the paintings of the students, but to solve it only by words and explaining, it's annoying. It's nearly not possible. But if I can show it in the small size, I can show it. And on top, the students see how fast I can capture his big paintings in this small one, and he can recognize by himself, oh, it doesn't need so much as I painted into my painting.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
fantastic.
do little oil sketches.
Yeah. Well, you touched upon this a moment ago, and we do like to explore this, and we didn't discuss this in your previous episode, is your color palette and what you have on your color palette. So would you take us through the colors that you currently have, if you have a set palette, what you have on your palette currently?
On my palette currently, it's nearly exactly this. I can show you. It's a lemon yellow. It's a cadmium yellow. For the warm red, I used cadmium red, but it's so high pigmented, and by teaching pigmented, and by teaching, I noticed that many of the students have difficulties with the dose of the red, and so I go to I only know the German Krab red, madder.
Oh, rose madder. Oh, yeah, yeah. M-A-D-D-E-R. Yeah, rose madder.
Oh,
okay.
perfect. So thank you, Deeple. Okay, madder. That's magenta, or you can use Rubin, but I love magenta. Magenta is like a joker by mixing, because it's not so opaque, but it's a strong color, and it makes to put a little bit of magenta in, or do you say magenta?
Yeah.
Magenta. Okay, if you put a little bit magenta in it, it pops out immediately, and I love to use magenta. Then the reddish blue is an ultramarine, and this is like a
cerulean.
Cerulean, yeah. And then the Payne's gray and the Van Dyke brown, and then I use two kind of whites. That's the zinc white and the titanium white. The zinc I used in the beginning because the titanium is so strong and highly pigmented, opaque, and many of you will know it when you started. You mixed a white in it, and after that you have no possibility to go back darker, and then the painting becomes a little bit chalky, and you mix and mix, and you paint, and it still stays too bright, too chalky. There are two solutions. The solution, if you stepped into that trap, is to wipe it away and start from the beginning on this part of your painting where you want to get darker again or more saturated. And to avoid that this happens, you can use in the beginning only the zinc white, because the zinc white is much weaker and translucent, and you can push the color very controlled in a brighter way, and you can go back darker on it without problems. And only in the end, when you want to let the highlights pop out, you use the titanium white. It's a good trick for the beginning. In the meanwhile, I mainly do not use zinc white, but when I'm teaching, I go back to these two whites, and I can really recommend that.
Was there anything else that, when you started off, you must have had a different palette when you began? What did you start with? What were your first color palette? What was that?
The primary colors. And then there was this happening with the violet becomes a reddish brown and not a violet, or I wanted to have a saturated green, and because I used a very yellow, reddish yellow, the green became immediately too warm, and I wanted to have it loud and heavy. And when I began, that's why I used in the beginning permanent oxide green. It's nearly that tone, more poison green. But you don't need green in a tube outdoors. you don't need it, and it's good for the color harmony on your paintings. If you use that limited palette and you mix every green by yourself, they all will fit together. There are no disturbing greens in it. Right out of the tube, it's sometimes too loud. And to take a soft and muddy green with you, there's no sense, because that's mixed by itself. By accident, you have this muddy green. Yeah,
the decisions have been made for you somewhat, haven't they? So I'm wondering, is this at all influenced by, I have to read his name. Is your
by Thorsten.
By Thorsten.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though he's really modest and not at all arrogant, I have to pull every information out of his nose. Why do you make it this way? Why this? Why this? And some of my questions must have seemed to him very, what is she talking about? Because he's high-level educated by himself, and not this trial and error thing I did when I learned painting. And to see his art of not only the painting and the brushwork, also how he used the color temperatures to lead the eye and to make something, to let something glow. And I've learned a lot of him. Yeah. That's wonderful. And if you found a painting body like someone like him for yourself, it's so inspiring. I think it would be also nice to have a body on my level. I think it fits together immediately, but to have this slightly look up, it's so inspiring. Because I don't know if you know this exciting feeling to look at a beautiful painting and you could crawl into it and you will taste it, and it's so amazing, this feeling. And when I stay side by side with other paintings which are better, and we paint the same landscape, and I look at my painting when I'm painting, I'm completely by myself, and I look at my painting, oh yeah, that's not so bad, I captured it. And then after I finish, I go these 3-4 meters to the side, and I saw his, and damn, he got it. I never would dare to make it this way, or is that allowed to make it this way? It's so inspiring. Do this.
Yeah, I do.
And I know in England there are a lot of those plein air painters meetings, like the plein air painting group in London, for example. And we don't have this in Germany. Since now we have 2 plein air festivals, still small. One at the Ostsee in May, and one in autumn in Munich, and that's it. So for me to, if I don't want to go outside alone, maybe in the beginning, I didn't dare to go when I didn't paint in the meadows, but in the city. And there are a lot of people around. I don't want to be there alone by myself. And I found that the urban sketchers are very kind with us painters. If you go to the urban sketchers meetings, and nearly every city has one, you don't have to be alone. You find your peer group, and even though it's not so comfortable because you are standing with your easel very tall, and around you there are all these little sketchers on these little stools like this, and sketching in their little books. It looks funny, but you're not alone.
That's really interesting how Germany has urban sketchers groups. And it doesn't have as many plein air painting groups.
No, I think plein air painting will be the hot shit next time. And like urban sketching is here about 10 years, I think. And it's spread immediately. because it's so simple. Everybody can do it with a little book. But I think many of the sketchers will discover that the world is not out of lines. There are colors, color shapes, light, and everything. And I think sooner or later I will get them to go plein air painting. And that's my mission, to spread the plein air painting in Germany, because it's so sad to be always alone with it and to have the look on the islands, in the US. And there are so many of it, and here not. And that's why I wrote my book, and that's why I am teaching, and that's why I make all this stuff.
Well, that's wonderful. And I think you will be, especially with viral videos like you had with your wonderful beach pathway.
The fence painting, yeah.
That's right, yeah. Well,
I think that's once in a lifetime.
Well, we don't know. Let's hope for more, because you are an inspiration. And let's talk about your domestica course as well, because
yes. After my book was published, I had the question of domestica. I didn't know them until then. It's I think Spanish-based platform with many millions creative online courses. It's about knitting, furniture, drawing, computer stuff and everything, and many paintings. But they didn't have plein air painting in it when I did it. I think it was 2021. And I think they asked me not only because of my amazing art, it's because they wanted to discover the German market. And so they were looking for German-speaking teachers. And so they asked me. And we did it in Berlin, and it was so exciting. It's live painting while speaking in front of 4 cameras for every angle. And there's no editing. You don't make cuts, and you can't repeat anything, because it's not an over voice. You have to talk while painting. And if you have make wrong decisions and everything, you can't go back because it's on your painting. It was difficult because we did it surely not the beginning about my palette and how to apply in a la prima the oil paints. We did it in the studio, but then there was the main part is filmed outside in Castle Charlottenburg, in the park of the castle. And there were several planes above and playing children's and dogs barking. And I always have to pause because of the audio. And that was really difficult and challenging. But I put everything I know inside that course, and it's for completely beginners, because I explain not only my equipment, but especially how to apply the paint in alla prima to avoid the smudging thing, and to paint one above another for avoiding these little white flashes between, and to get fast. That's the main thing outside, to be quick enough to capture fast moving light situations.
Yeah. I always find as well interesting, and I only spoken to a few artists about this, is edges and how important edges are on objects, because you can some artists will
that's
give
my
edges.
My personal newest discovery, because the first nearly 10 years I knew it in theory. I heard a lot of it, and I thought I knew what it's all about, but I didn't absolutely. And Thorsten Wolber was one of those guys who told me every time when we spoke about my paintings, he tells me, you have to be more careful with your edges. Not every edge, to make it sharp and important and eye-catching. To make an edge sharp, it needs to have softened edge around to be more important. And it was so difficult to me to decide where do I put the soft edge? Where do I put the hard edge? And I made an online course with a really amazing Marc Legoux, a Canadian painter, specialized on these edges thing. And I made a course. I can show it. After that, I made some still lifes, especially for controlling the edges. Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting how less is necessary. It takes only a few edges to explain the whole subject. Even if it's a complicated subject, you need here an edge and there, and the rest is added by the viewer's eye. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to paint it. And to understand this, and I'm on my way to it, that's my next big thing, the edges control. And I think you can recognize, if you scroll to my Instagram feed, you can see the beginning without any edge control, and it's getting better and better, and I'm still not there where I want to be. And for me, my challenge is when I paint a boat, for example, I paint the shape of the boat nearly exactly, as correct as possible, and then I try to find the edges where I can destroy them. And I think that's still the wrong way. Thorsten told me that I have to paint, if it's a green boat, I have to paint a green shape without contouring. And then I can test, if I made an edge here, is it enough? Okay, not yet. But if I made it here a little bit, is that enough? And so it's much easier to find out how many edges a concrete, detailed object needs to be explained. Mm. That's a different way of not only painting and seeing, it's a different way of thinking, not constructing. And very interesting when you are painting something man-made and you have the perspective, then it's so important to get the exactly right angles, that the perspective isn't off or the subject isn't leading to one side and everything. But if you have a circle, for example, and you can't do it here the right way, but here you are too shivery, too wobbly to do it the right way, you can leave it like it is. You can let it out. There's no edge, but here's the perfect round circle edge, and here you can let it open, and the viewer's eye will add an edge and the correct edge, a more correct edge that you would have been able to paint with the wobbly brush. And it's a win-win situation. It makes the painting more interesting, and it makes it more easy for you to paint. But the difficulties behind is to decide where you need an edge and where not. And that's what I'm learning right now.
Yeah. And do you find yourself, whilst you're learning something like this, like I've just discovered this conversation through the different podcast episodes, do you find yourself when you visit museums and galleries looking for this in other people's paintings to discover how they have used this?
Yeah. But you have to learn before you have to learn what the issue, and then you can discover it by watching other arts. Without knowing something about edges, you can watch a painting and you feel this one is more interesting, this less, or this is better, this not, but you don't know why. When you know this, the same with colors and composition and everything, if you know what you are looking for, you will discover it in the paintings. And that's why you can go in if you have a museum with an exhibition with always the same paintings, you can watch them from time to time, and you will, if you are growing as a painter, you will discover completely different parts in that paintings, in this well-known paintings, because you have a different look at it, because you grow in your knowledge, and then you will grow as a viewer of art. That's really interesting. It
is. I love that, and I think it's a real gift to kind of keep learning new things.
Yeah,
experienced you become. I haven't spoken to you about galleries, and what has your experience been? Do you exhibit your work, and if so,
no, not at all. It's because I think as long as I earn my money with illustrations, I try to keep my plein air painting as a passion, not to feed me. Of course, I sell my paintings. If someone wants some, he can buy it. And most of my paintings I sold with Instagram, and most of them because of the location hashtag. Because if I paint in Brittany, in the Bay of Concarneau, then there are some English old couple which made their vacancy every year since 40 years, and they will have a look on Instagram and we see the location hashtag, and they will discover my painting, and then that's the idea, oh, I want that painting. So sometimes it's a little bit disappointing for me, because I think they buy my paintings not because of my genius. They buy it because of the connection to the location. But for me, it's okay, because if someone recognizes the location in my paintings and says, yeah, that's exactly the mood there, and you captured it so well that I want to have it with me, that's the best for me. That's a big, big compliment. I think even better if a gallerist says, oh, you have one of the most interesting paintings I ever seen. If there is this emotional connection to the location, and that's to my painting, that's perfect.
Yeah.
So you can buy my paintings. I have 2 galleries here in Germany which have my paintings but didn't sell since 1 year. Doesn't work. But it's a special thing in Germany because we don't have such an art market. I discovered it by seeing thriller or crime series English, like Inspector Barnaby, for example. If you go to the scene in the living room, you can see a lot of landscape paintings in English living rooms. And if you go to a German living room, there are nearly no original paintings at the walls and nearly no landscapes. I don't know why. I think that's tradition, style, taste. So if you see a painting in an average German living room, it's mostly bought by IKEA, a print from Matisse or something, or Picasso. But to have original paintings on your walls, it's not so often in Germany, and that's why there are not a lot of clients.
That's unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah. So most of my paintings I sell to England. Definitely. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that we have some of your work in this country.
Yeah, you have.
It's fantastic. Well, that's really interesting. And so what are the 2 galleries where people can see your work in Germany? Because hopefully people will be seeing this episode and say, I must now go and buy these paintings. They've been there for a year.
Yeah. I can mention it, and you put it into the links, but I have a shop on my website. You can buy it directly by me. And
okay.
Yeah.
So
I think maybe it's because I don't need the money by paintings. And I think it's a little bit to be safe, because if I didn't try it to live by my paintings, I can't lose. So as long as I didn't try it, I can say I will make it sometimes later. It's my safe place not to try it yet. Maybe I'm a little bit scary about that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I understand that. So let's start with where you would like people to go to see your paintings and purchase them, because you're not reliant upon that income, but people will be interested in purchasing your work. So your website, what's your website so that people can go and purchase your work?
So my website is my name, yorühmer.de. And I have this page with my shop. And I didn't do my shop automatically. I thought about it, but I have to pack every single painting. So it's a personal thing. And to make the purchase process more automatically, I think it seems like I have a lot of business right there, and that's not. And I have a little window to ask me if the painting's still available, and then I will answer. So it's a real direct contact with me. And if the people are interested in that I put a frame on it, I will do it. But normally I do it without a frame because it's much more simple to send it. Yeah. And my sizes are really small, so it's no problem to send it right over the world.
Wonderful. Well, there'll be a link in the description for that. But also, what's any other social media that you'd like people to look at to support you and see your work?
The main part is, as I told, my Instagram account. I have my website, and my website is more than my paintings, and my shop is, it's all about my equipment. I show my complete equipment. I have the announcement of my workshops. I introduce my book with all the content in it. And it's really old school meanwhile, but I have still a blog where I post every painting I ever did, and wrote much more to it than in Instagram, because with Instagram it's hate and love. It's amazing how many people I reach with my Instagram account, and the amount of feedback. I love it really. But I know I'm only one step to lose my Instagram account, because if it's hacked, everything's gone maybe. And so if I rely too much on that little Instagram account without having my website and especially my blog, I can lose everything in a minute. And that's why I want to be sure to have my own controlled stuff. And sometimes it's really annoying when I have posted all the stuff on Instagram to post it again on the blog. And sometimes I think, is there anybody out there? Is there still reading audience? I don't know. But it's like my daily, my diary. It's like my diary for myself. And I go back in time, and from the really start, 2012, when I started, I post the paintings. In the beginning, not day for day, but I started the blog 2016. But I posted every painting I ever did. So if you're interested about my development, and if you want to compare yourself with me in the number of paintings, okay, I did my painting number 20. How does it years before, when she painted her 20th oil painting? You can go back to 2012 and you can see my oil painting number 20. And that's, maybe you can recognize that you're on the right way.
Well, I'll make sure that that's not only on the screen, but it'll be linked in the description along with your website and your other Instagram accounts, because you did send me links to your plein air group. And
yeah, I have the Instagram account to spread plein air painting into Germany. That's at plein air Malerei at Instagram, where I will repost German-made plein air paintings. And it's not about the paintings itself. I always show the setup situation on location, because I think it's not about the result and the beautiful paintings. It's about just do it, go outside and paint. Yeah, and then I have the Instagram account to my painting buddies, the plein air Malheur. And we are right back from a week in the Bavarian Alps, where we've painted 1 week together in really bad weather conditions. And then I have the website pleinairmalerei.de, where I try to build up a platform for German plein air painters, but I have to admit it's at the moment I don't do a lot at it, and it's on a low level, but it's still there and it will grow, I hope.
This is 2024. This episode will be online forever. So by the time someone sees this in the future, it could be all super up and up to date.
Yeah, it could be exploded.
Yeah,
maybe.
But I did see you post on Instagram your a collection of pochades from your trip with the bad weather to Bavarian Alps.
Yeah.
And they look beautiful. They're fantastic paintings. I love them. Really nice.
Thank you. And I can and at the Plein Air Malheur account, you can see how different 4 painters paint the same landscape in the same weather conditions in the same time. And I'm sure if we would be a group of hundreds, it would be hundreds different paintings.
Yeah.
And that's so amazing that every painter has his own view to the landscape and his own style and his own method. And I love it to see all the differences, but also the similarities. I love it.
Oh, it's fascinating. And as I said, all the links will be in the description of the video and the audio platforms. And we do recommend that you check out the links, you support the artist. It's wonderful artwork. I love it. It's such a fantastic guest. I really appreciate you being on the podcast.
Thank you. The pleasure was mine.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that episode. If you can support the podcast by leaving a like or a comment down below, that would really be great. But what we'd really like is if you're able to leave a review on the podcast channels, wherever you listen to it or download it, because that helps us get spread around the internet so that more people have access to us and able to see what we're making.
Also follow us on Instagram, and we'd really appreciate it if you like and engage with our posts. Help get the podcast better known. Thanks for listening.